Hello there, I'm Scotty, you're not. Welcome back to Halloween Horror Month, where it's Pink Week, I guess. I don't know. I'm recording all these in a row, so it is the next day from when I recorded the last one, but I just changed into this shirt last night after I took a shower, so technically clean. I got no chili on it from those chili dog things, those videos. The video I put out on the chili corn dogs. That was filmed last night as well. Like I said, I'm pre-recording, so it is September right now. Anyway, today we are taking a look at this movie, My Best Friend's a Vampire. An alternative title was I Was a Teenage Vampire, which makes more sense. It makes more sense because my best friend is a vampire, but that's the best friend. And he's not our main character. He is. He's the vampire. He's the narrator. And so, it's weird. I Was a Teenage Vampire makes more sense. I guess they didn't want to get it confused with Teen Wolf, which you could. It doesn't ever go that campy route like Teen Wolf did. He doesn't become a vampire and become instantly popular with people. It's a teenage comedy with vampire stuff in it. And it works. It works. It stars Robert Sean Leonard, which is a name I didn't know, but then as soon as I saw him, I'm like, hey, that's the kid from Dead Poets Society. The more you know. Cheryl Pollack plays the love interest. Darla. I knew it, Darla. Renee Abenijois. I don't pronounce the name. Plays MODOK, a vampire who is helping our main character, Jeremy Capello. He's helping him adjust to his vampire life. Evan Mirand plays his best friend, Ralph. I love Ralph. He comes across as that friend who's just supposed to help his friend get laid. He shows up, it's one of those things where Jeremy comes down, he has his breakfast, his friends are like, hey, let's go to school, come on. And he drives him to school, that sort of thing. It's like Nightmare on Elm Street 2, if it was the best friend, if it was Grady instead of Lisa. And the plot with this is that after a night where he goes home with a mysterious woman, he ends up getting bit and becomes a vampire. And he goes through the changes and, comedy ensues. It's actually very realistic. Like, if this were to happen in real life, I think this would be how it would go down. It's not all play for comedy. There's some stuff with it, but, they could have gone in a different way. It's only PG, but it's 80s PG, so it's good. This came out in 1987, which I must remind you is the year of my birth. And it is one of two movies that I know of in 1987 to have the song "The Future's So Bright, I Gotta Wear Shades" playing in the movie. It plays during a montage, because you gotta have a montage. And during the end credits. The other movie I know of from 1987... Wait, this is not 87. This is 89. But the other 80s movie I know... It's not 87 then, it's 80s movie. The other 80s movie I know of that has that song in it... This one. Dream a Little Dream, which... is better than this movie, but I still like this movie. This is also PG-13. But... Look at that slip. Look at that. It's beautiful. That's the stuff for that. Vestron, you're doing good. They got another one coming out. Can't remember what it was, but I am interested. Although I am collecting these now, so I have to get the backlog of them. But some of them are upwards of $20 to $30 for some of them. So they're a little expensivo, but eventually. Maybe if I'm focusing on Smallville next year, I should just work on getting those from eBay and just do that. And not about getting other movies to do review series for. Anyway, so we meet our starts with the narration from the main character, Jeremy. that he always has a dream, and in the dream, he sees this girl who is a cheerleader and is always coming on to him, but he's more interested in Darla. And then there is another girl, a mysterious woman that he finds attractive, and he ends up in the girl's locker room. And yeah, I don't know. And the mysterious woman ends up being Nora, who, like, it's destiny, I guess. Like, maybe she's using her vampire influence, because they later tell him that he can influence women. Maybe female vampires could influence men, you know. Which I feel like nowadays, with the state of the world and how they do things, it would work either way, you know. But he works for a grocery store. Kind of like Rigby's, but it's a bigger grocery store. But he has this old man named George. I wish George was in the movie more. We only have one scene. I liked George. I wish he was in more of the movie, but he's only in this one scene. I liked him though. I liked him. But he gets a call to deliver. He basically a complaint that he only delivers to old people, which is a funny joke because he, you know, oh, there's no Bengay or no teeth, you know, denture cream or anything, and so he delivers it to this old house that he says is abandoned, and this woman Nora is there. Which at first I didn't catch on to it because there's a cat there. The cat scratches him, and then this lady popped up. She's like, "Oh, Nora is a little bit, you know, adverse to strangers," and so she like starts licking and kissing the bluff, and okay, she's a vampire, obviously, and she's like, "Come back tonight. I'll make it worth your while. Come back tonight midnight." And I'm like, okay, this is a little weird. It gets weirder. He does come back that night. His best friend's like, hey, you gotta do it, man. You gotta do it. Stop worrying about, you know, all this. Do it, you know? So let's talk about this love triangle that doesn't exist, in a way, before we get into that. So there's Darla, who he has a thing for, and then there's this other girl who's the cheerleader. Now, I'm no expert, but this is kind of different from what I've seen. Weird kid usually has a crush on the cheerleader, and it's the, you know, strange girl that has a thing for him, and they end up getting together in the end. But here, he has a thing for the strange girl, and they don't do the thing with the cheerleader thing. She's just not, this love triangle is really non-existent. It doesn't really go anywhere or do anything, so I don't know why it's there. Just to be there, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so he goes up. I itch. Apparently, I'm not scratching it very well. I got pimples on my arms, and it's all right. So, what was I? So he shows up at midnight, and she's ready to go. Like, he comes in, and the cat leads him upstairs, and then she says and then the woman is there. She's all dressed all sexy, and she says, my name is Nora. She's like, call me Nora. She's like, that's what the cat name was, and I realized, oh, she's turning into the cat. Okay. But it doesn't track, because it's like, oh, so the guy's transporting the dogs, the girls and the cats. But no, later, a bunch of vampire women turn into dogs, so I don't know. So they start to get freaky. Did I remind you, he is a teenager. Now, it's one thing that with Twilight, where he's supposed to be a teenager, played by someone the same age as the actress, as Kristen Stewart. I don't know why I forgot her name for a second. But this woman is supposed to be an adult hitting on a teenager. I know, this is the 80s, alright? But you could not do a movie like this now. The actors have to be the same age for it to work. But this is supposed to be a grown woman coming on to a teenager. You're like 16, 17, that's illegal. Doing this, they're getting going, and she bites him. How he doesn't feel her bite him is beyond me, because later, like, hey, you're bleeding. I was like, what? You know, he's like, hey. I'm like, but, like, what, you didn't feel it? So, David Warner and his fat sidekick show up. That we later find out is Professor MacArthur and Thorndyke. Who's a vampire hunter. He blows up the house, and we're led to believe that Nora died. I say that because the ending of this movie is sort of a head scratcher, so to speak. So from this point on, he starts to act different. He's not hungry anymore, and all of a sudden he realizes that he can't see himself in the mirror. But I don't like that scene where he finds that he can't see himself in the mirror. He's like, oh, the mirror is broken. I'm like, no, that's not how mirrors work. The mirror, what? He thinks that if a mirror is broken, like it's electronic or something, like all of a sudden you just won't be able to see yourself in the mirror, and that's how mirrors work when they break. What? No, it's made of glass. It literally breaks. I don't know. He eventually asks Starla out, and they go out on a date, which goes great. But then as they're making out, he goes to bite her. And, but he freaks out, leaves her there. Her best friend just happened to be in the next car over, making out with her boyfriend. And he takes off and leaves her there. Right? There's also scenes of the professor chasing after, a man chasing after two high school students. Not only that, but they do this thing when they wake up in the morning, and Ralph asks Mrs. McCarthy if there's any speed traps this morning, because not McCarthy, Mrs. Capello, Mrs. Capello. No, not related to Tim Capello, the I Still Believe guy from the Lost Boys. Also came out this year. But, so he asked about the speed trap. I'm like, why do you ask that? Because that comes into play later when they have to leave school being chased by these guys, and they trick them into going into the speed trap. But how they trick them is kind of stupid, because they're driving. All of a sudden, they just pull over to the side, and they keep driving by. I'm like, what? And they get caught in a speed trap. I'm like, they didn't see them park? What are they doing? Why didn't they just stop? It's kind of stupid. And even then, I guess the cops didn't know they were chasing kids. But then later there's another chase. Getting after them. And because they're chasing after Ralph's car, eventually they think that Ralph is the vampire, because they're idiots. Anyway, Jeremy keeps seeing this guy standing around following him. This turns out to be MODOK, played by Rene Auberjonois. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name, but I know he's from Star Trek. But I know him as Les Poissons. How I love les poissons. I like to cut and serve little fish. First I cut off their heads, and I pull out their bones. So little delish. Les poissons, with a cleaver, I hack them into. I pull out what's inside, and I serve them fried. I love little fishes, don't you? Yes, he was the chef from The Little Mermaid. The original one, not whatever that new piece of shit is. Yeah, he was the voice of the chef from Little Mermaid. That's why I know him the best. As and he's on other voices. I also do believe he was Professor Ludwig von Drake. I do believe he did that voice too. Hello there. It is I, Professor Ludwig von Drake. Which, in case it's another song of mine. I'm blue as I can be, green with jealousy. Look what you've done to me. I've got those green with envy blues. I mean those red with anger blues. And then the purple with passion blues over you. Orange. You're gonna squeeze me with the seats. Neath the yellow. The mellow, the yellow moon, so I can lose those green with envy, red with anger, purple, passion, it's blues. And that's the green with anger, green with envy, blues. Did you hear that last note? It was like blue. No, anyway. Sorry. I get a little crazy, but yeah, I think that's him too. So, no, that was Paul Frees. Never mind. But that was Paul Frees. Never mind that one. Just ignore it. Erase it. Scotty was an idiot. Anyway, but he was the chef from The Little Mermaid. That's what I know him from. Everybody says, "Oh, he's from Star Trek," but he's the chef from The Little Mermaid to me. But he shows up and he says that he is a 600-and-something-year-old vampire, and he's going to train him. He's telling him about this book that Jeremy never reads, but he was telling him about the book. He's got to read it. And eventually, after he's trained him, he has to leave. There is an interesting scene, though, after his freak out with Darla. He goes to a butcher shop, and he gets a bunch of steaks and a bunch of chickens, and he orders the pig's blood. And the guy's like, "What'd you say?" He's like, "I want a quart of pig's blood." What? What was that last one? Pint of pig's blood? Maybe just that. So this guy knows about vampires, and he's providing them with pig's blood and stuff. And there is a scene that is kind of funny earlier in the film when he starts to change. He's trying to make a protein shake because he thinks that his condition is a protein deficiency. So he's making this protein shake, and he's going into the fridge, and he sees this raw meat, and he squeezes the blood from the meat, which I don't know how it'll work. And then he puts it in there and he throws it together. But he can't bring himself to drink it, so he leaves. His dad shows up and he goes, "A protein shake, huh?" Takes the drink and he goes, yeah. "Dad, you're bald." Sorry, that line. Because the first scene, he wakes up and he's like, "You know what? I can't remember what Dad's face looks like." And he pulls the paper down, like, He's like, "Dad, you're bald." It's funny. Yeah. So, the climax of the film, from that point to the end, is kind of iffy for me. I enjoyed a lot of things. So, he eventually tells Ralph that he's a vampire, which is after MODOK leaves. He tells Ralph he's a vampire, doesn't believe him at first. He shows him the mirror thing. "Oh, it's a trick. David Copperfield could do that." And then he shows him the blood. That's when he realized what's going on, and he freaks out. But because of the way Ralph freaked out, his parents now think that Jeremy is gay, which is another thing you probably couldn't do in a movie nowadays. You can't have people phobic or afraid or nervous about someone being gay because, God forbid we be realistic. No, it's wrong, people would say. Now, phobic, if I don't want to say it's right or wrong to have an issue with it either, because, have a free mind about things. If you have a problem with it, then have a problem with it, but in this day and age, if you voice your opinion and it's not in the like of something like that, to me, it doesn't matter. Be who you want to be. The whole thing. I'm on either side. Be who you want to be. Gay, straight, trans, whatever. Be it. Be yourself. Be who you want to be. Don't worry about what other people think, right? I will accept you for what you are, no matter what. I'm not one of those guys. But there are people out there who have that opinion. The problem is they decide to voice that opinion. And when they do that, that's when the wolves come out. And I think that if you have that opinion, in this day and age at least, have the opinion, keep it to yourself. Now, other people say, well, you gotta voice your opinion or you never get anything done. To voice an opinion like that, it's one thing to say, "Oh, I don't like you if you're like that." I think that's fine. But if you start throwing slurs and dissing on them and shitting all over them because of that, then it gets to the point, you know, you can accept it for whatever. Now, this is a vampire movie, so I don't know why I'm going on by that, but I'm just saying, a movie that does that kind of thing, where it's like, that's not why he's running away, but it's made to look like that to his parents. That's what I'm saying. So, eventually, he goes over to his friend's house, which he's able to get in. He's not invited, but his friend opens the door, I guess. And Ralph and him are talking. They become friends. They go to a nightclub. Doesn't really work out. They end up at the mall. And that's where Darla is. So he talks to Darla. He gets back in her good graces. He apologizes, all that stuff. But then Professor McCarthy and Thorndyke, whatever the hell his name is, show up and kidnap Ralph. So this from this point on is where I have an issue. So he sees that Ralph is getting taken by them and decides to take off. But in taking off, he grabs Darla and takes her with him. Why does Darla need to go with him? It makes no sense. Like, oh, we need to have her in the climax of the film. We need to have her be a part of this. What if he ran off and she and Darla, seeing how distraught she is, how confused he is, runs after him and ends up getting in the car with him. When he says, like, those guys are kidnapping Ralph. I gotta help him. And she jumps in the car to help him. Why does he have to grab her and take her with him? I don't know, it's an issue. During this car ride to save Ralph, where the cops show up, and because the parents have this thing where they're listening to their cop radio 24/7, they get in the car and follow after him, right? And during this car ride, he confesses to Darla that he's a vampire. Now, much like with Ralph, when you're trying to convince someone you're a vampire, why don't you show the teeth? You know? No. They only have the teeth like once, maybe a couple times. I don't know. But eventually this leads to... Okay, so the vampirism in this is the least amount of trying to do vampirism. He's walking around in the day. It's explained by MODOK. Oh, you and I, we're living vampires. Only undead vampires can't go in the sun. Living undead. But they're all undead. What are you talking about? We are living vampires. We can walk during the day. I'm like, no, that's lazy writing so that your main character can walk around during the day. They're daywalkers. Blade's a daywalker. But that's the only time I've ever seen it. There have been other things where it's like, they have to cover up. But most of the time, even in Buffy, Spike had to cover himself in a jacket to run into someplace. You know? During the day. And they get there, and they think that Ralph's a vampire. They're about to stake him in a church. Vampires cannot go on hollow ground. But again, they don't follow the rules. So, you know, Jeremy technically shouldn't be able to walk in that church. That's holy ground. There's no way. And absolutely he cannot go in a graveyard. Well, no, I guess he can go in a graveyard, but a church. You can absolutely not go in a church. Graveyards, maybe, because Buffy, she fights in the graveyards, I guess. But, like, you can absolutely not go into church. But he walks right into church. I'm like, what? You know, there is a thing earlier when he had his date with Darla, he goes eating pizza. He was going, because there's garlic on the pizza. And I'm like, what? Oh, garlic. Can't eat it because it's garlic. So, it's like, and then they's like, well, you said you wanted everything. There was a sausage, onions, mushrooms, garlic. So he talks McCarthy down, Professor down. Hey, he's a real person. You're going to commit murder. Talks him down. The whole thing. He's not a vampire, the whole thing. So here's the thing. Because at this point, he gets during the chase, they get stopped by the cops. And he tries to tell them what's going on. But the way he explains it makes them believe he's wacko. If he explained, hey, there are two crazy guys that kidnapped my friend, for some reason they think he's a vampire. I don't know. They're crazy. They're nuts. And they're going to kill my friend because they think he's a vampire. I don't know. They're crazy people. That's how you could explain it. But no, he makes it sound like he thinks what's going, so they throw him in the cop car, but then Darla steals the cop car and they run off. By the way, they never get in trouble for that. Anyway, Chase, he eventually convinces McCarthy to let Ralph go, but then Ralph, who has a wreath around his neck made of garlic, hugs Jeremy, which makes him go, ow! And that's when he realizes that Jeremy is a vampire, and they run off in the graveyard. But the next problem I have, as everything is about to go down, Nora returns. Now keep in mind, we saw her staked, and the place blows up. Fire's just as lethal to vampires and anything else. And again, they go loose with the rules in this movie, so who knows? She's still alive. MODOK shows up with a bunch of vampire women who turn McCarthy into a vampire. And unlike unlike Jeremy, he's with it. He's like, well, I guess things have changed from whatever the hell his name is. I'm a creature of the night now. I will go wherever I want. And I'm just like, that's a little... David Warner is cool in this movie, but I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know. And then the parents show up. After everyone leaves, you see them return to the dogs. There's a scene earlier with a bunch of dogs barking at them, and MODOK even says, oh, they know what you are. I think that the vampire girls were the dogs the entire time. This is never really explicitly stated, but they turn into dogs as they run away, so I think so. Even Nora, who I thought her transformation was a cat, but you didn't honestly change it, whatever. Shut up, birds! Maybe the birds think I'm a vampire. Shush, please. Anyway, the parents show up and they say, we know. He's like, you know? Yes, we know. We know about the world, and we are going to accept you for what you are. And I'm like, I forgot for a second. I'm like, what? They know? I'm like, oh, they think he's gay. That's right. And he's like, because he goes, oh, I'm going to introduce you. This is Darla. She's my new girlfriend. You're like, oh. I'm like, so then the next logical step should be, wait, then what was your problem this whole time? Now, there is admittedly an issue with this. I thought it was going to end with her becoming a vampire. But it doesn't. And he's just like, because MODOK's like, why don't you come with me? And he's like, no, I got school in the morning, And I'm like, wait, you're a vampire. You're going to go to school. MODOK told you, he says earlier, that they only age 1 year every 10 years. So he's going to be a teenager for 20 more years, which means he's 18 or 16. I'm confused. Is he 18? Because if he's 16, then I know that you're technically an adult when you're 18, but you're still a teenager. So I don't know, is he 16 or is he 18? 18 would make sense for, hooking up with a vampire chick. That would make more sense, but I don't know. But again, if he's not going to age at all for 10 years, and he's going to be with her, she's going to be 28, and he'll be only 17 or 19. So you're going to look bad on her. And then another 10 years, she'll be 38. Or 36, I should say, if they're both 16. So 36, and he'll be 18. So I don't know. I think they should have made a sequel. My Girlfriend's a Vampire, where he has to turn her. You know, could have done it. Could have. I don't know. I enjoyed it though. I'd say it's pretty good. So, what are your thoughts on My Best Friend's a Vampire? Let me comment. Let me like, share, and subscribe. Yesterday we got stupid with bringing on Cheer to Die, and tomorrow we're gonna get more stupid. Cause this one's a screamer, baby.